Described as one of the worst nights of violence in British football, the Prime Minister is demanding action. She's made it plain she believes in stiffer sentences for hooligans, and she's sending for the officials of the Football Association to discuss at number 10 how they intend to deter the offending fans. They have to produce a report within the week on the action they intend to take against clubs with a bad record. Although earlier today the Secretary of the FA, Ted Croker, had been saying that football could do very little. Luton Town Football Club have said they believe the violence was premeditated and organised. And Mrs Thatcher told the Commons she put it down to lack of parental and teacher discipline and family background. Well, we'll be looking at the causes and the suggested remedies. But first, a report from Luton on the night the fans turned into a mob.
The worst violence erupted with the final whistle. Millwall fans invaded the pitch, ripping up seats and throwing them around. At first, the police were forced to retreat, but they soon regrouped and charged the hooligans. 35 policemen were hurt. One was knocked to the ground and stopped breathing. A colleague trying to give help was punched and kicked, but he successfully got him breathing again. Daylight and the full extent of the damage to the ground was plain to see. Ground staff were busy all day, clearing bottles, beer cans, nails, bricks and lumps of concrete from the pitch and the terraces. People living around the ground were also busy clearing up. Their windows and car windscreens were smashed by Millwall fans leaving the ground.
They come tearing down the road, about 70, 80 of them, and that bin up there, they used all the bricks and that for ammunition. And they just come along and belted them through all the windows.
I shut my window, called my husband, and before we could get down, they smashed all my lot.
How frightened were you?
There's a concrete. Look, there's my concrete.
How frightened were you?
Oh, what, 72? And my husband 78, and they were frightened. Poor man. Good, it frightened me to death.
As they come out of the ground, picked up anything, and they were just throwing it through the windows. As they come down the road, they've smashed car windscreens, the house windows. I've come out to try and for a bit of protection. I've gone to the football ground entrance to try and get some police outside. I got hit on the head with an iron bar, with resulting in 6 stitches.
One of the trains which brought the Millwall supporters back to London was wrecked during the 45-minute journey. A British rail spokesman said that workers used to seeing trains damaged by soccer fans were astonished by what had happened. They said it looked as though a bomb had exploded inside some of the carriages. Complete ceilings had been torn down and seats ripped apart. Luton Football Club officials met for more than 4 hours this morning, then announced that in future they'll refuse to play clubs which have fans that cause trouble, including Millwall.
We should not subject either the people of Luton or our supporters to that kind of incident in future, even if that means forfeiting the points of a game.
Outside on the pitch, Luton players, including goalkeeper Les Seeley, who had a knife thrown at him last night, were taking it all in their stride. After all, they did win and now go through to the FA Cup semi-finals.
Millwall's reputation for having some of the most violent and moronic fans in British football means club officials have repeatedly been forced to apologise for the supporters' behaviour, yet are powerless to prevent the trouble starting. Club Chief Executive Tony Shaw said they were sorry for Luton and shattered by the violence of a few hundred animals.
We have a notorious image. This is what we're saying. How many of them were real Millwall supporters? Because any club in the country to a varying degree now suffers from hooliganism. It's a blemish on our society, not just football.
But in the streets round Millwall's ground in south-east London, residents know too well of the massive police presence regularly herding fans to the den. The Metropolitan Police say Millwall's reputation means large numbers of police are put on standby for home matches, and year after year new measures are taken to try to control fans.
Before they put all the fences up, I used to come and look in the windows, mainly watching the TV, tell like the scores for the football, and as I say, I've had my window smashed by a dustbin lid that went in.
Yet Millwall fans who attended last night's match refused to accept responsibility for the trouble and instead blamed poor organisation at Luton.
First of all, trying to get into the grounds was a complete and utter joke. And once in there, Yeah, you got he said 8,000 people packed into where 5,000 people capacity should be.
A lot of people say that Millwall have got a terrible reputation, that the fans in general behave like hooligans. What do you say to that?
Well, it's been a reputation we've had now for years, and I suppose, you know, we can never ever shake it off.
The violence has happened so many times before, this in an FA Cup tie against Ipswich 6 years ago, that Millwall's chairman once threatened to close the club down. What he can threaten now to try to control the renegade fans is anyone's guess.
In the House of Commons, last night's events in Luton were condemned by MPs on both sides of the House. The MP for Luton, John Carlisle, who was at last night's match, said the only way to stop the soccer hooligans was to inflict physical damage on them. The Labour leader, Neil Kinnock, said the whole country had been horrified at what he called this breakdown of behaviour in our society. He said the causes of such behaviour should be closely examined. From Westminster, Noel Lewis.
Soccer violence has now reached the top of the political agenda. The Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition have both committed themselves to action against the football hooligans. Mrs Thatcher decided to get involved this morning when the Sports Minister, Neil McFarlane, was told to pass on her annoyance to the Football Association. The FA have been told to report what action they intend to take against clubs with violent supporters. It's an assumption, almost an order, that action will be taken this time, and they've been given just 1 week to decide. Then the Prime Minister is going to have the officers of the Football Association on the carpet in Downing Street. The government itself is being urged to ban the sale of alcohol in or near football grounds. That's been done with dramatic effect in Scotland. But MPs from all sides were outraged by the violence. There were calls for severe penalties and protests that if the police could be mobilised against the miners' pickets, they should be used against hooligans. Neil Kinnock appeared to offer a coalition against crime. There was, he said, national concern about violence, crime, drug-taking, a whole breakdown of behaviour. He promised Mrs Thatcher Labour's backing if the government took action against the causes.
If the Right Honourable Lady is prepared to take action to get at the causes, can I assure her, she'll have the full cooperation of the opposition in taking activities to provide the cures.
But the Prime Minister, in a frosty response to the Labour leader, said there'd been enough inquiries into crime and hooliganism.
The causes will vary from lack of parental discipline, lack of teacher discipline, background, everything. When one has said that, it is not exactly easy to cure it.
Nearly all Britain's professional football clubs have encountered the problems caused by so-called fans who run amok on the terraces, but some clubs, often through no fault of their own, have consistently attracted troublemakers.
Millwall's problems are severe, but they're far from being unique. Only last week at Chelsea, another London club with a big hooligan following, a visiting player was attacked on the pitch. For years, Leeds have had to put up with thugs who call themselves the City Chain Gang. At Bristol City, things have got so bad that the club secretary has resigned, sickened by the violence. And even a club like Blackpool, with only a few thousand on the terraces, has a big hooligan problem. Various remedies have been considered. In Scotland, there's been a ban on selling alcohol at football grounds for 4 years. The Scottish Football Association believes that things have improved ever since. On policing too, the Scots are far stricter. Scottish clubs are compelled to pay for more policemen than English ones. And some believe that when supporters travel to away games, they should always be accompanied by police from their own area, because those policemen will know the troublemakers. Then there's a question of sentencing by magistrates. Should there be stiffer sentences as a deterrent? And should the vandals face more serious criminal charges? And there are many advocates of detention centres as places where hooligans would have to go at least on match days. But these solutions and others have been mooted for some time, along with conferences, commissions and reports. But any optimistic talk about a breakthrough has been killed by a fresh outbreak of soccer's disease. So, has the government done enough?
It is a society problem, and one that football isn't able to handle on its own. The government gets over £200 million a year from betting tax from the football industry, and some of that money should positively be used to combat this problem.
But how? In practical terms, what should the government be doing?
When we saw Neil McFarlane last November, we suggested there should be a central committee made up of high-calibre personnel from the Home Office and Police, the Magistrates Association, the transport, getting these fans to grounds, covering the provision of alcohol, and of course the football people. Strong guidelines should be given, and if anybody of those parties is not adhering to those guidelines, then action should be taken.
I've always acknowledged that we've had a part to play in helping the various authorities, the Football Association and the police and the other forces of law and order, the transport police and perhaps the ferry operators and so on. And I'm anxious to do what I can to help, and have since 1982. But at the end of it, government doesn't run sport in this country. Every governing body of sport runs itself. I don't choose the chairman of the FA any more than I choose the chairman of the Test and Counties Cricket Board. That has to be done by the sport itself, and it has to regulate itself. We have a job to play, a part to play in all this, and a job to do alongside them. We provide monies in many, many ways, and we provide other forms of assistance. But they've got to work out how they're going to tackle this problem, and I want to find out within a week precisely what they're going to do.
Neil McFarlane, the Sports Minister. 29 people appeared before Luton magistrates this afternoon on charges arising from last night's trouble. A 19-year-old youth who admitted threatening behaviour was sent to a detention centre for 3 months. It was his second offence at a football match in 6 months. Another man was fined £250 and given a suspended 3-month prison sentence after he admitted using threatening words and behaviour. And 2 Millwall supporters who appeared before the magistrates asked for police protection when they left the court. They'd been met outside by about 12 Luton supporters. Police led them out another way.